welcome back to the Beyond the Arc podcast. Today I'm here with Matt Guzman. We're going to talk a little NBA free agency, some of the recent moves that have been made in these past couple days. I don't know, Matt. I don't know if it's just me, but I mean, it feels like the excitement around free agency, I don't know, it just doesn't it's just not the same as maybe some of the past years. I don't know if you feel the same way. I mean, the Paul George move was pretty cool,
I could
but yeah, I
no,
don't know what
I
your
think
thoughts
I
are.
see where you're coming from because a lot of these players that are being moved are either kind of young, so they're not quite at the peak of their like drawing everyone in and the attention that they want. But some of these older guys have been on the move before. Like we've seen this from Paul George before. We've seen James Harden make headlines in free agency, so it's almost like it's more expected, unless that it's not exciting. It's just that it's not as shocking anymore. I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's true. And also just like the reporting around it is just like Paul George to Philly has been, I don't know, people have kind of, I guess, expected it for a
Yeah,
while
the
already.
writing's been on the wall.
So yeah, we can start there. Paul George to Philly. I mean, I think it's the Philly does need a guy like that, just someone on the wing who can defend, just be a shot maker from out there. Just they just haven't had really anyone since Jimmy Butler that has really cut it at that position.
Right.
And now
Right.
you have kind of your big three with Maxey, Paul George, Embiid. They fill around the gaps. We can loop in too with Eric Gordon, Andre Drummond. The roster is still pretty empty. I mean, they also got Kelly Oubre back, but they're still missing. They still need to fill out the roster. But how do you feel about where the Sixers are at now?
I think that they've been I've written about this countless times. Like the idea that they've just been kind of in no man's land, like doomed to forever lose in the second round, with Embiid at the helm of that franchise. I don't think it's necessarily his fault. I mean, he's really, really good player. He was up for MVP. Like I think that it's not anything that he's doing wrong. It's just that the pieces surrounding him haven't been good enough to get them where they want to go. We saw it with James Harden. They tried that and it failed. Now Harden's over in LA. We saw him try to do it by himself. They let go of Jimmy Butler. They've had a lot of moves that have kind of altered the direction of their franchise, and they're still trying to just find that one piece that's going to get them over the edge. And I think I really do like where they've found in Maxi. I think that he's really a budding superstar. And I think that adding somebody like Paul George, who doesn't necessarily need the ball in his hands to thrive, is exactly what they need because Maxi can do the handling and the ball handling, and Joel Embiid makes his own shots down low anyways. So if they can get somebody like elite, like Paul George, that can shoot deep, that can shoot mid range, that can be a pick and roll guy, that can basically the best version of a role player that you can find because he's a star, but he doesn't need to have the ball in his hands to thrive. And I think that's what they've needed. And I think that they're going to be able to find that chemistry and find the spot that they've wanted to be in. I could really see them going far with him.
Yeah, no, I mean it's just a huge talent add. Someone you always just felt like they were a little a player short in a lot of
Yeah,
these series that they were
right.
going into. I mean, obviously the concern is this deal is going all the way out to 2027 to 2028. That's just a really long time. Paul George is 34 right now. He's going to be 38 by the time he comes off this deal. So by the age he's 37, 38, they're probably not going to be worth $50 million. But this is that's a deal you sign now you're trying to win in these next 2 years. So obviously you're going to expect them to really fill out this roster with
Yeah,
lot more veterans. I think they could still use a point guard. I mean, Tyrese
okay.
Maxey I see more as like an off guard. I think at this point you also want Paul George to be playing more of the three, which he was on the Clippers next. It was him
Exactly.
and Kawhi at the
Yeah,
three and the four. Have him play the three because so he doesn't have to guard necessarily like a point guard or a shooting guard. Someone maybe a little bit bigger, where he can
sure.
use his length over his speed. And then someone at the four, who can. I mean, Robert Covington, they had him on the roster last year. I think that would be a good fit. Just someone who's gonna take some of the bigger matchups in terms of just like pure size. So Paul George isn't have to bruise down low with that. And I mean, of course, there's been kind of the thing that's been made out about Paul George is with the Clippers, he just hasn't really wanted to do the dirty work in terms of being like an elite defender. We'll see maybe if he'll try to buy into that now with the Sixers, just to kind of prove that narrative wrong. Because obviously he's paying attention to that stuff too. He's probably seeing what people are saying about him. So maybe he will
Sure.
get back up to where he was defensively. But yeah, bringing in another four man probably can shoot the ball, but maybe a little bit more of a bigger body, and then a point
Yeah.
guard that can help facilitate, really pick up the opposing team's best guard
Right.
and
Right.
be effective there. I'm trying to
No.
think just fits off the top of
Well,
my head, but yeah.
I was gonna say a player off the top of my head for point guard, Tyus Jones. I mean, he's up in free agency this offseason, and I think that he's somebody that, he's not that star. He's not quite going to demand that kind of money or that kind of contract, but he could come in and really be a difference maker for them. A player like that, just kind of under the radar, a good strong selection that many teams might not think would be made, and then all of a sudden he becomes your X factor down the stretch, right?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I like that fit a lot. Actually, it doesn't turn the ball over, so
Right.
really helps set you up and pretty strong offensive play. I don't think it's going to cost a ton to get him, so
Right.
I do like
Now,
that fit a lot.
that's the important part, right? Is the cost, and that's what I wanted to ask you. Um, Now that they've signed Paul George and they've also extended Maxi on a max deal, the big three, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, combined, they're making over $600 million. That roster is incredibly top heavy, and we saw that this season with the team named the Phoenix Suns, and we saw what happened to them because they were the ones that they were all top heavy. They were superstars, but then the rest of the roster didn't quite fill out. So I'm curious to see, like, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that, and if you think that could be an issue.
Yeah, I think the difference with this Sixers team though is that their skill sets don't overlap as much as the Suns. The Suns, like Katie, Booker, Beal, they
Sure.
kind of play similar in the way they want to get to the mid range. So it's the theory that the sum of the parts is less than like what they are, I guess, individually. I don't know if I'm completely saying that right, but like
No, I get it.
Embiid, obviously he's playing down low, and George and Maxi can play off of him in terms of attacking a closeout, spotting up, moving off the ball, relocating. They can do that sort of stuff. And then also Paul George is a good defender. Embiid's also a really great defender. And they defend different positions as well. They're not all like going to be taking up the 1 through 3 spots. And then who out of those three guys is going to guard Luka
Right.
Doncic, or who out of those guys is going to guard Anthony Edwards or Jamal Murray. Like the positionally, they're all a little bit different. They all bring some different skill sets. Not saying Beal, Booker, Durant are all the same players. They all have their own nuances, but generally, like the way they play, they
Yeah,
kind of do overlap
absolutely.
with each other a lot. So I would say that's the one big difference with this team. I think that's why people. I don't think that would be a huge concern too. So
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Anything else to add about the Sixers? I mean, they Drummond, Eric Gordon. I don't know if you want
That's
to
right. I
talk
mean, they've been making a lot
Kelly
of moves.
Oubre.
I think
Yeah.
they're committed to making a roster, and really, I think these players are buying into whatever's brewing over there in Philly. I hate to say trust the process because that has not worked since Joel Embiid showed up, but it seems that they're really getting something going over there. So I'm curious to see how they go.
Yeah, yeah, I guess you think about it like really big picture when Sam Hinkie was here or at that team, and it's just like, was this all worth it? And I guess
Right.
they really don't have a championship to show for. They never made a conference finals, but they've also been very relevant since that time in terms of being perennially in the playoffs every year. They've had good series, and it gives something the fans to talk about. I mean, I think they're in a better spot. They have a talent like Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. They're in a much better spot than
Yeah.
I don't know, the Detroit Pistons. So I don't know, from that perspective,
Hey, don't
maybe
knock the Pistons. They
it
just
didn't
signed
work out.
Tobias Harris. They're keeping him.
Oh man, why? Just why, man? Just why?
I don't understand it either, to be
I
honest.
I realized you didn't have the Tobias Harris deal as one of the deals on
Yeah, no, that
the
was
major
just, yep.
deals list.
It's just kind of lost in space there.
Just like the Pistons.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we could talk a little bit about that later. But yeah, good role players they're picking up. We'll see how this roster fills out. They got Jared McCain.
That's right.
Yeah, I've been doing some decent coverage on, or a decent amount of coverage on Jared McCain recently, and I might be biased, but I'm buying into him. The intel around him is really strong in terms of him as a worker. Obviously, he can shoot the ball. I think he's going to have a shot to be a contributor for them, just because they need shooting around Joel Embiid, and the concern
Right.
for him is defensively. But I feel like he'll be able to figure it out. He's about 6 foot, I think 6'2", 6'3" wingspan. So measurable's not like amazing, but he's 200 pounds. He's not someone that's going to get bowled over like a Rob
Yeah,
Dillingham or anything like
it's
that.
true.
So keep an eye out for Jared McCain as well. All right, we can pivot to maybe Jason Tatum re-upping or re-signing with the, I know I said re-upping, re-signing with the Boston Celtics, 5 years, $314 million. Richest deal in NBA history. What were your thoughts?
it was kind of funny to see it happen again because he breaks the record of Jaylen Brown, who was the richest deal in NBA history before him. Um, I mean, the Boston Celtics are straight off a championship. A lot of people had a lot of things to say about Jason Tatum, and whether he was deserving of a title. I think it's that's a dumb argument because I think that sure he had some struggles, right? And there are games where he definitely needed to play a little bit better in the offseason or postseason, but at the end of the day, like he's a huge piece of that team. He's one of the big leaders. He's one of the reasons. He's one of the main reasons that they were NBA champions this year. So I mean, you got to pay your stars. You got to pay the players that made you who you are. So I like the move. I think that they're showing that they trust him and they're really rallying behind him. They are not buying in any of this outside narrative that he needs to be doing more. And if they feel anything like that, they'll tell him, look, man, like we got to work on this. But like at the same time, like I think that if it's not broke, you don't fix it. And the Celtics have all of their major players returning next season. They've even got Al Horford still coming back, and they signed Derek White. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are now locked in for quite a while. So to bring that entire core back is going to be huge for them to try and just do it again. That's all they got to do is really just go out and do exactly what they did this year.
Yeah, I hope too Jordan Walsh can take a step up too. He didn't really play a ton
Sure.
for them this year, but I like Jordan Walsh's game. I think he'll
Yeah.
be a contributor for them at some point. But simultaneously, as that news about Jason Tatum came out, the extension or I don't know if it's extension or like just re-signed a deal, but there's also Derek White too signing a new deal with the Celtics. The Boston Celtics ownership group, the Boston Basketball Partners LLC, and led by majority owner Wick Grusbeck, they announced that they're going to sell the team after winning a
Yeah.
championship. So they're
Yeah.
signing all these guys to these huge deals, and it's not on my tab. You know,
Right. They're getting out of there.
we're out of here. But I'm reading here, he's going to be the team governor through 2028, but the group is expected to, sell the Celtics by 2024, so this year or early 2025. So for these deals, it's all going to be under whoever that new ownership's tab. So
Well, you better hope the new ownership likes your players then, huh?
also has a lot of money too.
Exactly.
It's interesting. I was talking to someone earlier today, and they mentioned that the thing about it's on another ownership's checkbook, but also that they don't want to, this ownership group, they didn't want to go through being the owners that breaks up this team, because inevitably that's going to happen, because just everyone's deals are just going to keep going up and up and up, and at some point you're just not
Right.
going to be able to afford six players that are all probably top 50 players in the NBA. Like Porzingis, Holiday are still in there. Like who knows what's going to happen with
Right.
that group over the
Exactly.
next 2 years. This team probably, like, one of those guys is probably not going to be here in 2 years, and that's just how the contracts work in the NBA, and it's just kind of the what it's going to be. So kind of have this smaller window, trying to really push in all in for all this right now. So should be interesting to see how the Celtics do. It's like there's like the inevitable end.
Right.
They won this
Right.
championship, but the end is coming for this, I guess, kind of iteration of the Celtics.
Well, at least they got a championship out of it, and
They
kind
did.
of like I was
Yeah.
saying, they're making sure all their major players are coming back at least for next year. So that's to me, that's if you're bringing back all your players fresh off a title, like you better be back in the NBA Finals next season, or there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of going to be the goal. It's going to be back to the championship series or bust. So
Yeah. Yep. And then also for the people that are saying, Tatum, you saw how he played in the playoffs, didn't win Finals MVP, like he doesn't deserve this deal. He took a backseat in terms of sacrificing for this team. I think he had a really strong, I think, defensive playoffs. He did, some great stuff on that end of the floor, guarding, the five a lot of the time, boxing out, rebounding against a Daniel Gafford,
right,
against some of the other centers they faced, because that was the Celtic strategy the whole time. You put Kristaps and Al Horford on the back line, keep them there and help defense, have Tatum switch that initial action to get off the center, pick up the main ball handler, and blow up that action for whoever they were facing. And he took that sacrifice, he took that challenge. And offensively, obviously he didn't have a great playoffs by any means, and he probably knows that himself. But I think he's still made good plays, drove the ball hard, made some plays for his teammates. Did have some good scoring games here and there. So I think you also just can't pay him less. He's your kind of your figurehead of your franchise. You can't pay him
right.
anything less than the max. You lowball him, it's like, what are you doing?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it was the right move. I think it's the move they had to make.
yep,
But I was, at the same time, they might have had to make it, but I don't think they're upset to have done it in the
yeah,
slightest.
yeah, definitely. All right, we can pivot to Klay Thompson.
Okay.
The Warriors, I guess, kind of the dynasty, man. Probably me and you, we kind of, I guess, grew up, at least our teenage years. That was all we heard, it was Splash Brothers, Steph, Clay.
Right.
We saw all that kind of growing up, and now
I mean,
he's a,
we grew up
he's
shooting
a,
3 pointers because Curry was doing it. Like,
exactly, yeah.
absolutely.
Now Klay Thompson's a Dallas Maverick. They even traded it to someone that they're probably going to be competing for a playoff spot, which
Yeah.
is really interesting. So, yeah, I mean, did you think this was going to happen? Like, you think he was going to end up leaving?
Yeah. I think it's the entire situation has been pretty clear. Like, it wasn't just that one elimination game where he didn't perform that kind of did him in. It was just the entire thing. Um, their entire they've kind of struggled. Like, and sure, they won a couple years back, but they haven't really looked like that dominant team that they used to be. Curry's still doing his thing. Draymond Green has had all sorts of issues, but I think on the court he's been doing well. Klay Thompson was kind of the odd man out. He was the one that lost his fire there in the postseason, and so it's not like they're throwing him out because he didn't perform well in the last game. I just think that um, they kind of reached an end, and Klay Thompson was the one that was in line to go. I think that they were going to keep Draymond Green around. Curry's not going anywhere, so I think it was going to be him to see his way out. So I saw it coming that he was going to leave. What I didn't see coming was that he was going to go to Dallas. I had been hearing a lot of things like he was trying to convince himself he wanted to go to the Lakers. He wanted to stay close at least. Maybe go play where his dad played in LA. But um, for him to go to Dallas and join Luca, it's going to be interesting to watch for sure. But I was definitely surprised by the move. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it did feel like writing was on the wall a little bit with how this
Sure.
team was kind of turning. And you saw throughout the season, he wasn't super happy, coming off the bench for Brandon Pajemski. There was all these reports about, how he was unhappy. And, when you're unhappy as a player, you don't usually play your best, which is, I
Yeah.
think, kind of what happened.
Right.
It was just kind of the end for that group. He wasn't making shots. His defense has not to the same level, obviously, he was when he was younger. So, and I think Dallas got him at a pretty reasonable deal. Like, I don't think 3 years, 50 million, which is approximately like about 17 a year, 16, 17 a year.
Yeah.
I
Right.
don't think that's a bad deal at all. And honestly, I think the Mavericks do need like a bomber from three. So now you're looking at a group of Clay, Kyrie, Luca, and that starting lineup. PJ Washington, Derek Lively. I
Right.
guess for me, the one concern is like who's going to be guarding point guards in that group. Because I don't think Klay Thompson signed that deal with the intent of coming off the bench.
Right.
So it's like who's going to be guarding. I was going to say who's going to be guarding Luka Doncic, but Luka Doncic is on their team.
It's
But
Luca.
who's going to be guarding like Anthony Edwards or like Jamal Murray, like I said earlier. So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
it's
I
going to
don't know.
be that defense is definitely going to have some work to do, especially with Luca and Kyrie together.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily known for their defensive prowess, but I think that they have the pieces to do it. And at some point, they're just going to have to realize that, like, look, we have the offense, but if we want to be competitive and we want to play against the best of the best and not get nearly swept in the finals, we're going to need to play some defense and really learn how to guard these guards and these star players on other teams. So they've got a lot to figure out this offseason, but I think that that's going to be on top of their list.
Yeah. I mean, Dante Exum is a player option. Is that Dante Exum I'm looking at? Oh, nope. Sorry. I'm looking at the wrong contract. Dwight Powell has a player option for 4 million, not Dante Exum. Dante Exum expired. I was gonna say that's a guy they might want to consider starting just to have someone who can guard the ball on their team.
Fair.
Quentin Grimes, maybe that might be the guy they end up starting. So it goes Luca, Kyrie, Quentin Grimes, Clay, and then you have Gafford or Lively at the center spot, and you have, I guess, Grimes guard the opposing team's best
Right.
kind of
Yeah,
quicker guard, and then Clay guards the best wing on the other team.
I could see that.
Yeah, so that might be how it goes, depending on what moves they make. But I don't know. It's gonna be fun watching Luca and Kyrie's passing with Clay relocating off the ball, and obviously he shoots the ball so well. I mean, it's it's such a joy to watch him just shooting the way he relocates and his balance and how quick his shot is. I mean, yeah, that's gonna be fun to watch in Dallas.
Absolutely.
That offense got better. I mean, you basically replaced Derrick Jones Jr., who kind of was the worst offensive player in that starting lineup with Klay Thompson. So,
Yeah. Not a
yeah,
bad get.
not about.
If you're Dallas, I think you like your chances next season.
Yeah. I like that signing a lot. Grimes too. I like Grimes too. I mean, and then you get off Tim Hardaway Jr., who didn't have a great playoffs, but
Right.
I don't know. This is really random, but I like Olivier Maxence Prosper, the rookie from last year. A little bit of a
Okay.
deep cut pull, but a little bit of an older rookie. He's like 22, but he can defend at a pretty high level. Has some really good athleticism. Shot needs to come around, but he had a full year in the G League, so we'll
For
see
sure.
how he is coming into next year. Maybe that's a guy they start.
Right.
Gives them some more length, but yeah, that was
Absolutely.
just super deep cut basketball reference. I've been a fan of his game since like pre-draft last year, so had to shout him out. What's the next signing you want to talk about?
We can go ahead and do. I mean, we can talk about the Clippers because they're kind of looking a little bit different this season. Um, I think that, well, obviously the big news: James Harden's returning for 2 years and $70 million, so he'll stay with Kawhi Leonard now that Chris Paul, now that Paul George is gone over to Philly. The Clippers are going to have to fill some gaps. Now they've been making some moves. I mean, they kind of realize that they're not going to be able to just sit idle and watch Paul George walk away. They're not going to get these crazy huge players, and they haven't so far. But they're definitely going to start building a roster. So at the very least, they can hang their hat on the fact that Harden's going to be around a couple more years, as Harden becomes the new dynamic duo with Kawhi Leonard. So I think they're going to look a lot different next year. But I think I'm commending them for at least trying to make things happen despite Paul George leaving.
Yeah, they made a couple different signings. They brought in Chris Dunn from the Utah Jazz. Brought in Kevin Porter Jr., which that's a discussion to be
Interesting.
had. We can talk about that maybe in a second. Russell Westbrook re-upped. They brought in Derrick Jones Jr. from the Mavericks, about a 9.5 to goes up to $10 million deal. James Harden returns for this upcoming season on a 2 years, about $70 million contract. So it's pretty much the same team. I mean, you add some. I like some of the pieces they brought. I mean, Dunn's a good on-ball defender. Derrick Jones Jr. just had a really great playoffs. You got him at a pretty reasonable deal. So now you're, I think, kind of building your team more around Leonard and Harden, which is, I mean, Leonard hasn't had a healthy playoffs in quite some time, but he's still Kawhi Leonard at the end of the day. If he's healthy,
Right.
then they're in a good spot. James Harden too. I mean, he's regressed a bit in terms of his explosiveness, and like he's just not the same isolation player he used to be. But I don't know. How do you think this loss of Paul George is going to impact this team?
I mean, I can't help but think that it's hard to fathom what they gave up for him just to have him walk with nothing 5 years later, and people are talking that like they got 5 years of contention out of it. But to me, like when you swing for the fences and give up so many draft picks and so many cool players and all this for one player, you're going to want to get a championship out of it. The Lakers gave up half their young guys to get Anthony Davis back in 2020, and he came in, they won a championship. They haven't been back since, but they got their championship. It paid off. Um, and we've seen it with the Nets. They tried to build a super team with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden. It didn't work, and they're in shambles. Like that was completely a failure. Um, and so it's just one of those things where I think the Clippers have a lot of rebuilding to do because sure they still have a couple of their guys around Kawhi and James Harden, but those two players are only going to get older. And after that, they've kind of got to realize like, well, we gave up a lot of picks to grab players like Paul George and to grab players like Harden, um, and they're going to kind of have to find a direction as soon as they're done because I personally don't see them going back to, like I don't see them going to the Western Conference Finals this year. And I don't know if they will ever go back with Kawhi and James Harden because if it's not in the next couple of years, it's going to be even harder to do so in year three with these younger players and these other teams that are still going to be up and coming. And so I think that they're going to start thinking about a new direction, and obviously they're going to glean as much as they can from the last couple of years of their stars. But it's a tough situation over there right now.
Yeah, it's just weird to me that the hill that they died on with the Paul George contract was the fourth year. I think they
Yeah,
offered 3 years, slightly less than the max, and they just like didn't want to give him the 4 year max. And I guess the other end to that was you just give him up for nothing. Like I just don't completely
I've never understood that mindset.
understand
Yeah,
that. Like
never
it's
understood
just
it.
I just feel like the cost of that just kind of outweighs the benefit of I don't know. Just that doesn't make that's just such a I feel not as important thing. It's just you want to be able to retain this guy and like okay you want to move him at some point you can move him, but like why just let him walk for nothing after everything you've given up to this point and you
Right.
just there's really no way you're gonna be able to replace him. There's no guy out there in the market right now that I mean, can you think of anyone in that they could pick up like that would similar level of production as Paul George that they can bring in that's even available right now?
I really can't.
Yeah, like
I
I
mean,
don't really
DeMar
notice.
DeRozan, but he's even older, and
Yeah,
he's still good. But I mean, like,
he
I don't
can't
think that
defend.
he's going to be the
Yeah,
player that just instantly fixes them and replaces Paul George. You know,
yeah, no, yeah. So, I mean, they brought in some role players. Maybe they make up for Paul George's loss with just like chemistry, and you hope Leonard and Harden play have a more healthy season. But the fact that you have Paul George means you're relying on them more heavily on a night to night basis.
right?
So I mean, then you increase your chance of injury there. So yeah, not the best spot to be in the Clippers, and they're moving into the Intuit Dome going into next year, and they don't have Paul George on the team anymore. So
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to make up the groundwork there for sure. So I'm curious to see how they do it, what that looks
yeah,
like, because that's hard. That's a hard thing to do.
yeah. We can pivot to your Spurs. How do you feel about Chris Paul?
Let's do it. I loved it. I thought it was a great signing. Chris Paul signed 1 year, $11 million, to kind of come be a mentor. Like he's not going to come in and obviously he's going to get minutes. He's going to kind of lead by example, show by example these point guards, these young players. Like, look, this is how you facilitate an offense. And ironically, we were just talking about Paul George, who came out on the podcast and said that the Spurs we're missing one key player to kind of unlock Victor Wembanyama's full potential. He was like, they don't quite have the personnel that can come in and show you, look, here's how you get the ball to Victor. Here's how you get the ball around to your teammates. And he actually name dropped Chris Paul. He said they don't have somebody like Chris Paul on their team to do that. Well, now they do. Now the Spurs aren't anywhere near getting, going for Western Conference Finals contention. They still got a long way to go, a long way to grow. But somebody like Chris Paul can come in and really just magnify the growth of Victor Wembanyama and Stephon Castle, who the Spurs are going to look to kind of fill that point guard role this upcoming season and moving forward. So I really like the signing. He's not coming he's not showing up in San Antonio hoping to get minutes and hoping to take them to the finals, but he's coming to San Antonio to kind of prove that he still has that ability as a point guard, and he wants to prove that here's what I bring to a team. Here's why you want me. It's only 1 year. Things go well. Maybe they'll sign him again. Maybe he's done. Who knows? There's the future's kind of the future's a little bit cloudy with him specifically, but this season absolutely he's going to play. He's going to do wonders for Victor Wembanyama's development.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the rise of you hear all these player podcasts. They bring all these former players and they talk about who is your vet, and what impact did they make on you. And some guys have this vet really put me on the right path. They taught me a bunch of different stuff about being professional and just like how to play my position. And I think Chris Paul can provide that for Stephon Castle, like you said, Trey Jones. I feel like could learn a thing or
Absolutely.
two. Devin Vassell, I think I think everyone has something on that team can learn from Chris Paul because I think one of the things with the Spurs last year is just like passing wise, they just weren't a good team. And
Right.
Chris Paul obviously is going to come in and immediately not only boost that, but hopefully lift everyone around him in terms of
I really do
like
think he will. I think he's going to
yeah,
be a floor general.
yeah. So do you think he's going to start?
Yes.
Probably, right? Yeah,
Initially, he's going to start, and I think the idea is that as Stefan Castle kind of, in a perfect world, he learns from Chris Paul. He's doing work behind the scenes, and it gets to the point where he's going to outplay Chris Paul. He's got fresh legs, and he knows enough about the game and enough about Victor that he can kind of come in and lead that charge, and have Chris Paul kind of be the secondary guy on the bench. You know, it's they're not bringing him in with the intent of replacing him, but I do think that Stefan Castle should make it his goal to make it a no brainer that he's the starting point guard.
yeah. Oh, also Blake Wesley as well. I think Blake Wesley probably can learn some stuff from Chris Paul.
There's a lot of players on that team that can learn from Chris Paul.
Yeah. Do the Spurs make any other signings? I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I'm looking at
Not
their
yet.
roster right
They
now.
have not
They
really done
waived
much.
Dominic Barlow. I saw that.
Yeah, they didn't give him a qualifying offer. They did extend
Or
qualifying to
yeah,
Sandro Mamukelashvili and David Duke Jr. So they're keeping
I
some of their
like
young
Don
guys
Barlow.
around. Huh?
I like Don Barlow.
I love Don
I
Barlow.
thought he was good.
I did too. He was last season. He was on. So I did this little series called Five Beyond Wemby, just to kind of highlight five players that are not named Victor Wembanyama, who I thought would do well. Julian Champagny was on that. They haven't made a decision on his guaranteed contract or not, but Dominic Barlow was on there too. He had a lot of promise. He's long, he's lengthy, he knows how to score at the rim. I just think that this was more of a matter of they knew that they had to pick between a big man, and I guess they liked what they saw from Sandro more than they did Dominic. And both of those players are just as young. Um, and so
Sandro's a
Sandro
little
being able
older.
to, he's a
Sandro's
little
like
old, not
25.
right, not too much older,
Yeah.
but I think he scored double-digit points in 7 of his last 9 games of the season. So he really kind of had that uptick, and I guess they saw that they saw him having a higher ceiling than Barlow. I was personally a little sad about that news, but um,
Yeah.
we'll see how they take it.
I think Don Barlow's definitely going to get picked up somewhere. I mean, there's just not that
Absolutely.
many guys that move at that age and that size, like, just moves as
Yeah,
well as he does. So,
there's a lot that he can bring to a team.
yeah, 100%. I really liked him last year at Summer League when I was watching him. I was like, that. I think I wasn't the only
Absolutely.
one, too. There was a lot of people I talked to, and they were saying, yeah, this
Yeah.
guy has some, some pretty good
Well,
potential.
him
So,
and Julian Champagny were playing like prime Shaq and
yeah.
Kobe. They really were. The two of them were dropping
Yeah.
20, 30 point games all the time, almost every
Yeah.
time. So
I remember Victor had a pretty rough summer league. Like he didn't look very good when he was
he only
there.
played 2 games. The first one, he
Yeah,
came away saying he didn't know what he was doing out there.
yeah.
Second one, he had 28 points and almost led a comeback over the Blazers. But yeah, definitely not what people were thinking about. And then obviously, of course, he has a bad game, and everyone's like, he's a bust. They had no idea what they were in store for. They actually had no
Look what
idea
he
about
did this year.
basketball, really. So
Look what he did this year.
exactly.
Honestly, like if he was, I don't know, maybe in his second or third year, he might have been an all star.
I think so too.
I think he could
I
have
mean,
been
he
an all
got
star.
7 All NBA votes. He was up there in voting, and in this upcoming season, especially with Chris Paul kind of unlocking that potential from him, I really do think he's going to be an All Star.
Ooh, I like that
Absolutely,
prediction.
that's my prediction. Yeah,
All right.
he's
Well,
going to be
if
Defensive
Vic,
Player of the
if
Year. He's going to be an All Star. We'll see it.
you, actually you think he's gonna be DPOI?
I think he's going to take it away from Rudy this
All
year.
right. Well, if that does come to fruition, remind me to clip this part of the podcast, and I will, and you can run your victory laps all
Oh,
over
I
social
will.
media. All right. Trying to think of any other deals. Like Cade Cunningham got re-upped by the Detroit Pistons. Gave him the max. I mean, that's their franchise cornerstone. Still want to see more shooting around him, man. Like I just
Yeah.
like how is he gonna develop when you don't just have such little shooting? Like you don't have a spacing five. I mean, I like the players individually. It's just putting them all together. I'm not a really big fan of how all these skill sets are matching up. But I like
Yeah.
Ron Holland. I like Asar Thompson. I like Jaden Ivey. I like Jalen Duren. I like Cade. But all these guys together, I don't really know what this means right now.
I think the front office has been one of the woes of that franchise over there. So I guess you never know. I mean, I was really sad for Monty Williams because that guy went from the Suns to the Pistons and he got fired after 1 year in Detroit. And I was like, well, I don't think anyone was really expecting him to do well over there. So just the fact that he got fired anyways, it's kind of rough.
Yeah, yeah,
They've been a mess.
very much so. But Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris, they're coming in. They're gonna
That's right. They're about to do it. Yeah. They're in contention. You never know.
they're saving the franchise one signing at a time. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else to add about the Pistons. Oh, we can talk about the OKC bringing in Isaiah Hartenstein. They also re-upped on a couple different guys who were on their team before, like Isaiah Joe. They
Yeah.
brought him back. They brought in Caruso. I guess we haven't talked since the last time. Did we talk about Caruso's trade?
We didn't know.
Okay, well, I mean, that was just a gamble. I mean, I don't know why I said gamble, but that was just a huge win for OKC. You trade a player that was kind of a clear negative. I'm not saying Josh Giddey's like a bad player per se. I think he has some interesting skills. Just Caruso right now is just way better of a win now player and really fits
I
into what they
agree.
want to do. Yeah,
I
what
think with that move, I was more surprised about Chicago's mindset. Like I didn't realize that they were basically giving up on Lonzo Ball, which is really unfortunate. I mean, he had a lot of potential and he's been injured, but he was set to come back. And I think that I had been under the impression that they'd want to welcome him back and try and see how he would fit. But it seems that they've given up and they just really want to go for somebody else. So I'm curious to see how Josh Giddey does in Chicago. But I think you're right. Like Alex Caruso was a huge win for the Thunder to get in the offseason and for relatively cheap. I mean, they only gave up Josh Giddey. And so bringing him in is going to be huge on defense and on offense. I mean, that's a huge hustle player. He's one of my favorites of all time. He's an Aggie. So I've watched him since back he was in college. But yeah, I think that the Thunder are really gearing up to win now. I think Isaiah Hartenstein's a good signing too. That's one of the biggest free agency signings. They don't tend to do that a lot at OKC. And so for them to kind of go for a guy like that who's found success on the Knicks and found success on a team that's been in contention in the East. I'm curious to see what he brings to the West.
yeah, Isaiah Hartenstein has had such an interesting career. I mean, he was on Houston and the Clippers, and he's gotten better at every single stop. But now, I mean, he's cashed it all in. He's hung around the NBA, got waived a couple of times, and
Right.
he made it. He's on a contending team. They want him to play big minutes. They have 48 minutes now of great center play in Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein. So I really like that pickup for him. I'm trying to look at where he's been in his career now. Okay, he was at Houston to start. Or I'm talking about Hartenstein here. Then he went to Denver, got moved to Cleveland. After Cleveland, went to the Clippers, New York. Guess how old Isaiah Hartenstein is?
29.
25.
Oh,
I know, that shocked me. I just looked it up right now.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah, he's only 25. He's been in the league since 2018, 2019. He was 20 years old with the Houston Rockets, and now he's 25 with the New York Knicks.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
He's got a long way
Second
to
round
go
pick.
then. I guess
Yeah,
he's
long
hoping
way to
that this
go.
stop in OKC is one of the longest ones of his career.
I think they're gonna have a lot of success there. And he also just like fits play style wise. I mean, he's obviously he's not shooting the three ball a ton, but he has the ability to. He's probably one of the better passing big men out there.
Right, right.
Can run some dribble handoffs, stuff like that. Keep the ball moving. I think really fits into what OKC's identity has. And then
For
some of the
sure.
other guys too that they brought in. Caruso,
Yeah,
like we talked about, Isaiah Joe's coming back. Aaron Wiggins just signed a new deal, so a lot of depth. Still have Casey Wallace. Ousmane Dieng hasn't really even got a chance to play yet, and I think he has a shot to be good. 6'9", great vision, can handle the ball pretty well. Lou Dort's still there. Kendrick Williams. I mean, you just have a ton of depth on this team. So, and then you're bringing in three rookies in Nikola Topic, Dylan Jones, AJ Mitchell. If you guys haven't listened already, go take a listen to me, Gavin, and Yosh's top three and bottom three drafts podcast. We talked, and then OKC was a team we talked about. I think Yosh in particular really liked those pickups for those. I think those are very OKC type picks once you look into their game.
absolutely.
So yeah, OKC's in a good spot. I think they learned a lot from their last series against Dallas.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that they're going to come back better, bigger and better, literally. But, they're definitely going to make some noise in the West. And I liked watching them last year. I'm going to like watching them this year. Curious to see just what kind of a role Shea plays. I don't know how much more of a ceiling he's got. He played amazingly this past year. So we'll see if he can even take that to the next level or if him being consistent is just exactly what they need.
Yeah. Are there any more deals like any bigger deals? I guess maybe you wanted to discuss. I think
I
we
don't
hit
think
everything
so.
that's like
I think that was
major.
all of them. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, we didn't mention Mo Bamba going to the Clippers.
that's right. Told you Clippers making
Nick
moves.
Nick Batum as well
That's
going
right.
back. Yeah, the cap sheet I was looking at, I don't think has been updated yet with those signings. But yeah, those guys are going back to the Clippers. So it looks like they're just filling out their roster with role players
Yeah,
around.
they're gonna have to see how much they can
Yeah,
make up for that loss.
yeah. I guess any. big winners that stick out to you off the top of your head for this free agency cycle so far?
I think Philadelphia.
Yeah,
I think the
I
Sixers
agree.
have been searching for that player that can really help them go to the next level and doesn't need to have the ball and take that away from the other players. I think he complements instead of, he brings something to the table and he complements it rather than bringing something to the table, but you've got to feed him, you know. And so I think that I like what they've done so far. I think that they're poised for a big run next year. Um, and I think that I'm trying to think. I mean, I guess I would say the
Hey,
Celtics as well, making
yeah,
sure that they're keeping their players.
yeah. Oh, we didn't talk about this one. I think this is actually a somewhat major move. Contavious Caldwell Pope going to the
Mm,
Orlando Magic. I really like that fit because they just needed someone at that two guard spot
yeah,
that couldn't just bomb from three, pick up on defense as well. I mean, that's that backcourt of Jalen Suggs and KCP defensively is just really, really solid. You have Franz Wagner and Paulo Banchero 3-4, and then plethora of centers a plethora of centers they can play in Wendell Carter Jr., Goga
right.
Patazde they just re-signed, and then Mo Wagner as well. Really solid team. I think sorry, OKC Orlando is going to be one of those teams on the rise over the maybe we can see as much as next season. I mean they had their first playoff experience, and a lot of
Right.
times you see a lot of young teams kind of learn a ton from those types of games. And I mean, I know the Cavaliers really worked on that series. They just couldn't score. The Magic's offense just hasn't been good this whole year.
Right.
But another year of development for those guys. You bring KCP who can legitimately shoot the ball, which was kind of the problem for the Magic. They just had no one that the Thunder were, or the I don't keep saying Thunder, the Cavaliers were respecting from three. So KCP really helps fix that, and they still keep Gary Harris. So now that's two former Denver Nuggets guards on the Orlando Magic.
They're all there. Yeah, I think the Magic are going to be on the rise,
Yeah,
like you said. Um, they were one of the surprise teams of this past year to kind of go as high as they did, and with Paolo getting better, I really do think that they're poised for something too.
yeah. I guess the last thing to talk about is not a signing necessarily, but LeBron declined his about $50 million player option. And right now their Team USA their camp is starting this weekend. So we'll see if maybe they get a deal done by then. I don't think LeBron's leaving. I mean they just drafted his son.
Yeah,
There's
he's
no
not leaving.
way. There's no
It,
way.
it, it was more a question on how much he was going to re-sign
Yeah,
for, because
and
I
then
think he
probably
won. I mean, in the front office, they kind of let him down a little bit. Not that they have any obligation to him because they give him everything he wants. But this offseason, he made it very clear he wanted Klay Thompson or he wanted Jonas Valanciunas. He wanted a big player that they could
That's
kind of
right.
bring in for that full mid-level exception, so he could take that pay cut and let the Lakers be better. But I think after they kind of swung and missed on all their prospects, he's just going to re-sign for that max, and they're going to try and make do with what they've got.
Yeah, I mean, D'Lo picked up his player option.
I think they're looking to trade him though.
Yeah,
So I'm
probably at some
curious.
point. But at this point, like, you can't. I don't really know
There's not much
because
that they can do
trading.
to get better.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, you trade D'Lo, you're probably gonna get like two or three worse players than D'Lo. So
Right.
might as well keep him at that point. I mean, Rui Hachimura is gonna be back next year. Austin Reeves. I mean, they really haven't made any roster moves yet. So, I mean, Dalton Connect has been their move so far.
Yeah. I think he's
That's
going
been
to
the
be
that's been the
a great
highlight.
addition there.
Yeah, yeah, I agree as well. But yeah, they just we'll see what they do. I mean, the reason why he probably hasn't signed yet is because they want to structure his contract around the guys they potentially could sign.
Yeah.
That's probably what's going on here. But it's kind of drying up here. I don't really know what free agents are left. Maybe that's the last thing we can talk about, and then we can head out of here. But maybe who's left? Best available players. All right, so LeBron, Buddy Hield hasn't been signed yet. I know he's always been linked to the Lakers
Every
at
single
times.
year.
Yeah, Miles Bridges as well.
Okay.
But yeah, I saw something about that earlier. The Lakers might big clutch ties there.
Right. For sure.
Yeah, DeMar DeRozan. You see the report about that the Josh Giddey trade was the last straw.
Really? He didn't like it, huh?
Well, yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy.
Sadiq Bey, Tyus Jones, Mo Wagner's not on the Orlando Magic. They got his team option declined. Spencer Dinwiddie, Malik Beasley, Isaac Okoro.
Hmm. Some pretty good names.
Yeah, I mean, I guess after the LeBron DeRozan, like everyone else is, it's like you're in the off season for 2K, and
Right.
this is like day five of what
Yeah,
players are left.
that makes sense.
So yeah, none of these. I mean, the big ones that are left that I think really could make a difference are DeRozan and Miles Bridges. I'm trying to see what DeRozan's situation is, but I don't know. I guess for the Lakers, what do you think for fit in regards to those guys?
I think DeMar DeRozan is somebody that could come in and help them because he's kind of been waning, but he proves that he's still a very good scorer.
Yeah,
And so somebody like him could complement LeBron, Anthony Davis, and kind of play alongside those two and really make a difference in LA. But I think at this point, I don't even think that they should go for Buddy Hield. The amount of times that they've considered going for him, they're clearly either they don't see something, either they haven't been able to get the deal because he doesn't want to be there, or they haven't wanted him enough to really do whatever it takes to land him. I think they just kind of glance over him. I don't think that they should really go there. But I'm curious. I think DeMar DeRozan would be the best fit, best available for them. But at this point, I don't know if they'd be able to do it or if they'd be willing to do it. Who knows what the Bulls are going to ask for a return in him? So
yeah. I've been at the Drew League the past couple weeks, so DeRozan makes an appearance. Maybe I'll ask him what's
you
going on
should.
with your free agency.
He's going back to LA, going home.
Yeah, are you gonna be playing here next year or what? Yeah. All right. Cool. I think we've covered most of all the free agency discussion. I guess do you want to plug any work you've been working or things you've been working on recently?
Well, I just got
Spurs,
off the
Kansas
phone
City
with
Star.
Well, I just got off the phone with Ja'Kai Newton, who's best friends with Stephon Castle growing up. So I'm doing a big
Oh,
feature on
nice.
kind of the people around Stephon that have kind of made him who he is, have kind of watched him grow from his point in high school to now. So that's a story I'll kind of flesh out here in the next couple of days. And then as well, another one on Trey Jones. I spoke with him and his mom about her cancer and how she's a survivor and why he's an advocate for that. So that's something that can come later this week as well. So got some cool stuff coming up. And talking to one of the players that recently signed with the Spurs for Summer League. Going to kind of figure out, what he's looking for, what he's excited for, get his perspective on Summer League in general. So that's kind of what I got coming up here in the next week or so.
Was it that player that we were talking about?
Yeah, DJ Horn. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. Sounds good. Yeah. Keep an eye out for that work from Matt. Make sure to follow him. His Twitter handle is at Matt Guzman, just with no U. So Matt Guzman.
Matt Guzman. There you go.
Matt
Thanks.
Guzman. Also, make sure to follow Beyond the Arc on Twitter at Beyond the Arc 8 and follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening.